You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 25.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and love, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Vias.
Any communication problem that you have, whether that's speaking or listening skills, I'm going to actually dwindle it down to one core problem. And from there, you'll be able to have kind of this foundational step in which to improve your communication. So today I'm going to share with you kind of how we look at communication problems today, kind of the way we look at it from a symptomatic approach, and then talk about what is actually happening behind some of the symptoms we see of poor communication, and then share with you how from there you can start to improve communication. So first up, we tend to look at communication problems from the symptoms that we see. So sometimes we might say it's a language problem, poor word choice, or there's a lack of knowledge, or we tend to be scatterbrained, or better at listening because we're introverted, or better at speaking because we're extroverted. So then what happens is that we tend to approach all of these problems with looking at it from the symptoms. So we say, okay, we need to get better at a language, or we look at it as we need to practice more. And all of those things are definitely true. We can approach it from developing better skills or better knowledge. However, before that, there actually needs to be something that happens at a very foundational level in order to make any sort of obtaining of new skills to improve our communication more effective. So then most communication problems actually only stem from one root cause. And that means communication problems are actually a problem about emotional health. And emotional health means your ability to recognize your emotions and manage those emotions. And this is actually the foundation of most communication problems, whether that's you're trying to improve your listening skills or how you speak. And we can see this more clearly actually through public speaking. A lot of people are not so good at public speaking because they have a fear of it, and that is due to their own emotions. And even addressing the fact that it might be a language issue is that oftentimes people, even in their own native language, have a hard time public speaking, and people who give presentations in their non-native language actually can give really brilliant presentations. So when we look at it from an emotional health problem, it may seem still that there's lots of different problems in emotional health, and it may seem like kind of this big thing to tackle, when in fact, actually, most emotional health problems, which is our poor ability to manage our thoughts and emotions, actually really only stems from one problem. And that is we are overly concerned about other people's opinions. Now, at first, that may seem really far-fetched, especially if you're somebody that, well, I don't really care about other people's opinions, and they don't really bother me. Now, here's the thing about other people's opinions. There actually is a mirror effect. And the one side of the mirror is kind of the more obvious side where we can become obsessed with other people's opinions. And we don't really know how not to care about them. And I talk more about this side of the mirror in the episode number 19 titled Other People's Opinions. And so then the other side of the mirror is actually our reflection. And that is actually the part where we are judging people. And it is actually the same as being obsessed with other people's opinions. So looking at other people's opinions as a mirror with two sides means that one side, the actual mirror, is actually about what they think of you. So you're obsessed with what they think of you. And then your reflection is about what you think of them through your judgments or conclusions that you draw about them. So in reality, most of us spend equal amounts of time being the mirror and then being the reflection. So we're either concerned about what people think of us or we're judging and drawing conclusions about other people. And all this actually really means when we're using the mirror is that we are actually spending time in somebody else's head. So when we're worried about what somebody else thinks of us, we're spending time on, well, what are they thinking of us? So we're in their head. And then when we're actually judging somebody and drawing a conclusion about their behavior or what they say, we're still actually in their head. Because when we actually judge somebody or their behaviors, we are coming from a place of we know exactly what's happening in their head. We know their thoughts, we know their emotions that led to a particular action. So somebody did something we didn't like, and we judge them as if we know what's going inside their head. So then what does this mean in solving communication problems? Well, if we're in somebody else's head, it means that we're not inside our heads. And to solve our communication problems, it's necessary to be inside our own heads and know what's happening through a better understanding of our own thoughts and emotions. So then how do we begin to improve our communication problems, whether that's we want to speak better and communicate better with others or listen better? And the way to do that, and you might have guessed it, is to bring it back to what's happening inside your head with your own thoughts and emotions. And what that doesn't mean is that we try to control our judgments or stop judgments or berate ourselves for obsessing about somebody else's opinion of us. What that means is that we become curious about why we are obsessed about someone's opinion of us, and also curious about why we're actually judging somebody else. And this kind of curiosity, constantly asking yourself, well, why am I judging somebody, or why am I worried about what somebody thinks about me, and constantly looking at why you're having these thoughts is actually understanding your own emotional health. You're understanding your thoughts, you're understanding why you're having these thoughts, and you're understanding the emotions and the feelings that come from having these thoughts. So looking at this from maybe a more practical standpoint, and let's say you're trying to improve your listening skills and you're having a conversation with, let's say, your best friend, and she does something that you don't agree with and you actually think is ridiculous. And so you're busy judging her for something that she did. And the way to kind of bring it back to what's happening inside your own head after you've already judged somebody is to then ask yourself, well, why does that matter? Why do I find it ridiculous? And then you kind of keep going. So if your thought is, well, I think what she did was ridiculous. Well, why? And your thought is, well, I would never do something like that. Then you'd keep going with the why. Why would I never behave the same way as my best friend? And you keep going to the why until you get to a point where it reveals something about maybe a belief system you have, or maybe a true desire of yourself. And the most important point is that as you keep asking yourself why to get to your kind of inner thought, is that you actually don't lie to yourself. You're actually really truthful in why you think what your best friend did, why you think it was ridiculous. And it reveals so much more about how you think and feel and how you see the world. And from this standpoint, from this understanding of yourself, you'll have a better understanding so that into the next conversation, you will be more aware that you're coming into that conversation with this belief system. And you can see maybe patterns in conversations. Well, I tend to judge people in this manner as ridiculous because I have this belief system. And you can then say, okay, I have this belief system, and then you can clear up your mind with this belief system and then listen to actually what the person is saying. Because you won't be spending so much time in your best friend's head from a place of, okay, she's ridiculous, what she did was awful, or I would never do this. You would instead come from a place of, okay, I do think that's ridiculous, but I know why. And now I can then listen to her because I've cleared up what that judgment actually means to me in my own head. So in the next episode, number 26, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about this exercise and how you can use it to help find yourself. And I'll check back with you next week.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.